Hi, everybody. Oh, well.
What's up, fam?
What's up? Welcome, everybody, to How Do We Miss That? We're going to try this again. How Do We Miss That's a show featuring articles written by independent journalists who expose corruption, cover workers' organizing, and environmental crises while challenging corporate establishment narratives and talking points. New episodes stream live Sunday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern on our YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, Rockfin, Substack, Facebook, Telegram channels, and the podcast is usually published within a couple days on Amazon, Apple, Spotify, and more, iHeart. So if you are listening to the podcast, thank you. Go give us a 5-star rating there. I'm Indy, co-host, founder and editor of the Indie Media Today Substack, and now the Indie Media Awards on Substack, which I talked about before, but we missed that now. Co-host of American Tradition on INN, and co-host of Nobody Wants to Work Anymore on INN with Snow Himbo. So, all right, I got this guy next to me. That's Reef Breland. He is co-founder for INN, like me. INN's technical director. He's the host of INN News, and he's creator, engineer, co-host, and then he produces and first Tar Reade, Politics of Survival. We did that Friday.
Yep.
Hello there.
Yeah. So we're all members of Indie News Network, which we talked about before. That's a collaborative family of independent content creators, and you can find all our channels at indienews.network. I don't know why that changed all of a sudden. Please make sure to like the stream. Yeah, give this a like now, and we got to share it out because we just got crashed, and hopefully this thing holds. Now we're green. Now we're in the green, so hopefully we're going to hold. But God damn it, fuck you, whoever did this to us, because now all the promoting and all the sharing and everything that we did to set this stream up and get people here is completely gone, and now we're totally relying on the YouTube algorithm. And fuck you, YouTube, by the way, for taking away Eva Bartlett's channel. Garbage. This platform is garbage. Everybody go to Rockfin and Rumble. Don't even watch over there. Can we just go to somewhere else, please, so I don't have to deal with this nonsense anymore with these assholes? I'm so angry right now. That's what happens when you get a stream crash. I am heated. Rockfin.com/IND Left News. Rumble.com, maybe, /C/Independent Left News, if we're lucky. I have no idea if we're live over there or not. Because when streams crash, shit sucks. Oh, it says we're live now. Okay, good. Okay, we'll do it live. Good. We're over there. Hi, Rumble.
We'll do it live.
Your fake views. I know you're fake views, but we're gonna do it anyway. 70 people. Yeah. So we, you know what? Rage is a good mood for tonight because there's a lot of rage-inducing shit we're going to talk about. I'm sorry, but to trigger people, but we're gonna get into it tonight. Yeah.
It's been a week.
I've been quiet, pretty quiet on what's been happening, and I'm not gonna be so quiet tonight. I got some shit that I want to talk about. So, but before we do that, that's where we're gonna really go a little crazy, and
that's what she said.
On a technical side, you'll notice that the How Do We Miss That big thing underneath me and Reef is not there and spinning, and it's because our IndieLeft.media site went down and crashed, and so did INN.network. So both of those sites don't work, and I can't advertise a website that I know doesn't work. So I had to change the top of the ticker to How Do We Miss That? So I don't want to have it redundant in a couple things. It looks weird. So that's what's going on there, and we need to fix that. linktr.ee/IND. I haven't even made a Stream Deck button for it. It's so new. All right. That's where you find and you get all my stuff. All right. So I got stories, and we're already running late, so let's get to them. Bang. And of course, so who won? All right. We talk about strikes. We talk about workers. We've talked about writers. We've talked about actors. The actors are still on strike, by the way. This is the Writers Guild. And the Writers Guild settled and made a deal with the studios. Now, Some people are saying, should they have held out for solidarity and waited until the actors made their deal? There was a lot of pressure to get the writers back to work. Shout out to Big Bad Crab for the photo, for the thumbnail. All right. But we got this article from, there we go. Strikegeist over on Substack. Big fans of those guys. Okay. They've been doing good coverage on the writers and the actors strike from the front lines. And so they went and they found a business affairs exec, someone who works for the studios, a negotiator for the studios. All right. And they're going to give us their insight as to what they think happened here and what can writers expect now, who really won on what points, what it means for the future volume of shows. This person's opinion, and I don't know if this is a man or a woman or who this is, but I think that this is a really good article to go over. So what do you think of the writer's strike, dude?
I mean, there's stuff and things. It's good that they're on strike or we're on strike. It'd be nice if they showed a little solidarity with the other people on strike.
Right.
You know,
well, I think that's
whatever.
One of the sentiments.
Taking the first deal offered.
Well, I don't think it was the first deal.
Idea.
This isn't even close to the first deal,
Sure.
but they've been out for months. So we're gonna read what this person, and it's an anonymous thing, but that this was written for the Ankler. This post first appeared on the Ankler on October 5th. The membership ratified its vote on October 9th. So that was about, on Monday. So whole of Hollywood breathed a sigh of relief from anxiety and from annoyance as the WGA strike, the second longest in history, finally drew to a close. Personally, this person celebrated the deal the only way they could after months of compulsively discussing, reading about, and thinking about it, by taking off one whole day from discussing, reading about, or thinking about it in any meaningful way, even if that day happened to be the day on which the long-awaited final deal terms were revealed. And now that we've had some time to digest, we're going to come back with one last round of commentary to offer takes as a negotiator on three of the big picture questions that people are asking about everything we just lived through, and some predictions of how the deal will and won't impact the industry to come in the years to come. So, number one, did the strike work? Number two, was it worth it? And number three, and what everyone always wants to know, who won? So he's going to cut to the chase, and he says, if you're looking for the executive summary, the answers are yes, the strike worked. Number two, ask your favorite economist, philosopher, or politician if it was worth it, but it definitely didn't need to be this long and painful. And three, wrong question about who won, but if you must ask, we all won or we all lost. And I think that's a very diplomatic way of saying that the studio's lost, because he's still, whoever this is, still works for them. So they break these down and they ask how, did it work? And, they got meaningful gains and protections for writers in every sector of membership. So that's good. When they announced the TA was indeed, again, historic. We keep getting that word popping up, historic. It really annoys me because it's used to set a narrative, but it's historic in its depth and scope, with the Writers Guild achieving, to one extent or another, virtually all of its key goals, including first-of-their-kind benefits and protections around minimum staffing for TV and high-budget streaming series, success-based residuals in streaming, meaningful limitations on studio-driven use of AI in the writing process. That's all good stuff. But in addition, the new deal extends the system of collectively bargained minimums and residuals to original programs made for non-subscription ad-supported streaming services. That change hasn't commanded nearly the same amount of attention or controversy, given that the DGA made similar breakthroughs in its own deal earlier this summer, right? But so what's going on here is that they checked off a list, and studios kind of caved a little bit, but the studios are caving to what they're asking for, realizing that they're not really asking for the right things. And that's what this guy is trying to say. Right? As the streaming ecosystem increasingly embraces advertising in its ongoing search for a sustainable business model, history may find that the expansion of union protections into AVOD was one of, if not the most consequential changes in this agreement. So they got something about ad-supported video on demand, and that's like what they're talking about, Freevee. Everybody gets like a TV, a smart TV that's got these apps installed. So there are some of these apps that are ad-supported. Amazon's doing this. He's going to talk about this in a minute. Right? While many studio partisans would hate to admit it, the Writers Guild ultimately extracted concessions from the studios that almost certainly could not have been achieved without a meaningful strike. That's really important.
No, they wouldn't have even been talking to you without a strike. Having said that, I'm betting you could have gotten more if you wanted to, fight a little longer.
Well, it says in particular, count me among the many observers who believe that the studios would never be, while the studios would be open to new rules designed to provide writers with steadier work and better training opportunities, it would never agree to straight minimum staffing rules. But they did. I also strongly doubt that without a serious work stoppage, the studios, the companies that run the studios, would have consented to any kind of performance-based residual in streaming. At least not on top of agreeing to such significant increases in streaming residuals more generally. Right. So those are big wins, because I know that, the people that are running, what was it, Wednesday, or one of the biggest shows on Netflix that's getting millions of views, millions and millions of views, and they're not making a dime. But was it worth it? Well, labor strikes cause economic pain to many for the benefit of the few. And that widely distributed economic pain isn't an unfortunate downside of such strikes. It's pretty much the point. Right. But that's good. Financial harm to struck companies or workers who want a better deal. Downstream financial harm to adjacent businesses generates social and political pressures that further enhance that negotiating leverage, as long as the striking workers can capture the hearts and minds of those affected third parties and of the public more generally. And I think they did here, and he's saying that in more generally, the whole exercise is meant to send the message that in the grand scheme, doing right by labor is less costly and painful than not doing so, thereby making it easier for other unions to achieve meaningful gains without the need to resort to strikes. So they're doing it for, they're putting themselves up on the cross for everybody else in a way, is what they're saying here. Right? But this was an exceptionally long and dramatic strike, and exceptionally long and dramatic strikes cause exceptional economic pain. The most commonly cited estimate is that the overall economic cost of the strike was about $5 billion. Jeez. The Writers Guild itself estimates that its new deal is roughly worth about $450 million more over the 3-year term of the deal than the last pre-strike offer. Well, that's a substantial win. Right? But to its credit, the Writers Guild's leadership has been gracious in acknowledging the apparent disparity between these figures, as well as the uneven distribution of costs versus gains from its strike. Right? The leaders and members have vowed that the union will remember and repay the support shown and sacrifice borne by non-writers, and argued that its deal set important precedents that would in time and inure the benefit of virtually all the industry's workers. Okay. That sounds like a bunch of horseshit. So was it worth it? And if it wasn't, who do we hold responsible for that collective loss? What do you think, man? We're
Is it
going
worth
through
it?
Let me work
Put
it.
that thing down and reverse it.
Flip it and reverse it.
Let me work it.
Yep.
Right.
But he's saying that those are questions, of course, are for the economists and philosophers and politicians, and not for anonymous business affairs executives. But for most people, I suspect the answer will be based far more on how they were impacted personally by the strike and on how they feel about unions more generally than on any quasi-objective cost benefit analysis. But I believe we can, however, directly quasi, right? We can directly answer an adjacent question. Did it have to be this long and painful? And the answer is it absolutely did not. Because, right, for months before negotiations even began, a near consensus emerged around town that a strike was inevitable. As early as October 2022, a year ago, the Ankler, this publication, referred casually to the pending WGA strike. Just sort of the widely held presumption that almost inescapably manifests itself into reality. From there, it was a serve and volley game of bad moves, missed signals, lost opportunities, from the studios making a too conservative pre-strike final offer because of that perceived inevitability, to the Writers Guild dismissing the studio's August offer as a bad faith ploy before it was even delivered, and then countering with everything we said before but one less minimum writer. I could, and in fact did, write a 2,000 word. Right. Well, that's basically what they did. Right. But I could, in fact, did write a 2,000 word play-by-play, breaking the whole thing down, beat by miserable beat. Yeah, we don't want to read that, but because there's no
2,000 word play-by-play, I thought it was like going to be like a 2,000 word one-man play.
Well,
you know,
he could perform it. Whoever this is, I'm guessing we can get to the,
yeah. We can get Mike Tyson to perform it.
Yeah, with a lisp on stage. Let me tell you what happened in the negotiation.
Bro, he did one. He did one. Don't laugh. He did one.
I know that, but he didn't say negotiating every 5 minutes. Negotiating. Yeah, exactly. Negotiating. So you'll just take my word for it. Whether a strike was necessary, they could and should have gotten through it a lot faster and much less messily than they actually did. But who won?
Who won?
Right, and this
decide.
I love, I don't know who this is, but this question reminds me of a classic episode of The Simpsons in which Ned Flanders asks Reverend Lovejoy's God is punishing him. Ooh, he replies, short answer, yes, with an if. Long answer, no, with a but. That's very funny. Looking at the whole thing from the perspective of a professional negotiator. Now that's a mouthful. If you look at the basic agreement...
Perspective of a professional negotiator? That sounds like Jason Statham's next movie. Perspective of a professional negotiator.
Do you know who I am?
No? You know who I am? You know what I mean?
You know mine. So if you look at the basic agreement negotiations, negotiations, more or less in isolation, I'm going to do it like Mike Tyson now. The WGA won. If you ask the shitlibs at Vox, they won big because Vox is desperate to promote anything as a win, as a big win. The WGA managed to address, at least in part, virtually every issue on its list, from minimum staffing to performance-based streaming residuals to AI protections. The union dominated the press and social media wars, which the studios seemed to wage first uninterestedly, then inartfully. Although doubtlessly a compromise... Yes, inartfully. That's very, very kind to say that they bungled it badly. Although doubtlessly a compromise, the final negotiated deal looks a lot more like the WGA's demands than it does like the studio's final pre-strike offer, and includes concessions that most insiders and observers, myself included, thought were not winnable, especially on the issue of minimum staffing. Taking a broader view, however...
And they get pizza parties.
They might, but taking a broader view, this is where things get more complicated. And I really appreciate this analysis because this is really giving you a little bit more inside baseball about what's going on in the entertainment industry. But this person says, just like every other new collective bargaining agreement, the historic changes embodied in the basic agreement will be distilled into a new set of production and deal-making norms designed to maximize the studio's efficiency, as they understand it, in the deployment of their budgets. Just like in sales, when you get a new pay plan, you figure out how to squeeze the most out of that pay plan and what to do in order to have to work the least to make the most. Or where can I, focus somewhere because they're putting a big commission, so I'm going to look over there to make a little bit more this month, this quarter, this year, right? And the studios are looking to do the same thing. what they're saying here is that virtually everybody seems to agree that the 599 scripted comedies and dramas produced for the U.S. market in 2022 represent the true peak in peak TV. This guy's saying, finally, I don't know. As entertainment conglomerates continue to agglomerate and also ran streaming services fold into their competitors, the question isn't if the overall volume of series production will decline, it's by how much. Although it's going to take years for the industry to equilibrate.
Try that again. Try it one more time.
Re-equilibrate. There we go.
One more time.
Re-equilibrate.
Re-equilibrate.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Sean. Appreciate that, man. That's great.
He'll read anything you put on the prompter.
No,
He'll read anything you put on the prompter.
I'm not Burgundy. No. maybe a super chat, but maybe not. It will take years for the industry to re-equilibrate. All right. I expect that the long-term carrying capacity for a healthy and sustainable TV streaming ecosystem is 300 to 350 scripted shows per year, which is a decline of 30 to 40% from the high watermark of last year. It would take a better mathematical mind than mine to measure the overall impact, but the decline in development and production volume will certainly and dramatically offset many of the meaningful gains that the Writers Guild won in wage minimums. There's not going to be as much work available. There aren't going to be the number of shows available. Right? That's what they're saying here. And at the same time, now that Disney and Warner Discovery deplatformed several high-profile but sparsely watched productions from their services, thereby shattering the streaming industry's previously prevailing, if naive, norm of universal permanent content accessibility. This is really important here. Listen, studio streamers desperately in search of profitability will undoubtedly continue to prune their platforms of original content that they do not believe meaningfully contribute to their acquisition or retention of subscribers. In other words, all those increased residuals aren't going to be paid at all on projects that are removed from streaming services altogether because their low viewership can no longer justify the cost in residuals for preserving their availability. What just happened? Every show just went to a limited time.
Yes. I mean, it's literally back to, might as well buy it on DVD now. Like,
the studio is just going to be like, well, we're not going to keep it permanently up. We're going to keep it up for as long as possible, for as long as it's making us money.
Yeah, until it stops, people stop watching it, and then we're going to pull it.
Right?
Like, that's, and it might be even if it get watched more. Right? Because then those residuals are higher, no?
Maybe, but only while the show is active.
Like, essentially the minute, right? But the minute a high grossing show gets like people stop watching it, like people have already consumed it, they'll pull it.
Yeah, except there's a lot of people that don't really watch right away, so they're going to have to figure that whole thing out, and people are just going to have to.
Right, but let's say, for instance, something like Breaking Bad, where a ton of people watched it and still watch it because they haven't seen it, or Sopranos or whatever. That would then have, like, people would have watched it at a high rate when it went to streaming. Now, like, with that high rate, eventually, once it slows down, they'll pull it because they can't afford to, like, have it there.
Yep.
Maybe. I don't know. Number Wang.
So, right. So basically, they're going to cut shows early, and then they're going to pull them from the services. But while the writers deserved every ounce of protection it secured against the threat posed to the writing profession by AI, this person shares the opinion of actress and computer scientist Justine Bateman, Jason's sister, who has compellingly, if depressingly, argued that AI's true disruptive force will be unleashed not by the studios who they just made the deal with, whose leaders, despite the pernicious influence of Wall Street and Silicon Valley, they still retain some romanticism about filmmaking as an art form. But companies like Microsoft, Google, and Nvidia, I would argue Amazon and Apple as well, that already have studios, they have no connection to the history of the medium, no institutional relationships with the creative community, no union sympathies of any kind, certainly not Amazon, right? And no substantial economic stake in the traditional industry to protect. Yeah, that's a little bit scary.
Can you riddle me this? You're a sales guy. Why has no one made a company called Macro Hard? Can you riddle me that? No.
There's always the macro, and then there's the micro.
Yeah, no. I'm not down with that. No, thanks. I'm good.
No.
To be clear, none of these dire developments will have been caused by the writers or by the substance of their new CBA. This strike happened because this is our collective near future and not the other way around. But we can also wonder whether the deal struck by the Writers Guild was one that optimally positions it for the challenges to come. So here's someone in the weeds talking about minimum staffing, but at the same time, what they're saying was, yes, it was big that they got minimum staffing, but what they said was the minimums are largely in line with prevailing norms today and are unlikely to meaningfully change the typical composition of writers' rooms. I mean, that's nice. The union argued these minimums were necessary to avoid further deterioration in staffing practices, but this person's not sure that's true. They also know that, now this is the other thing, minimums have a way of becoming maximums, and many savvy studio negotiators welcome generous, collectively bargained minimums as a benefit to their work. How about that? They're like, oh yeah, we're going to get this number of writers as a minimum. No, that's all you're going to get from now on as a maximum. Or not as a maximum, but that's it. They can't go below that, and they're not going to go over that, and they're going to make you have to deal with whatever. Okay?
Yeah.
So, and we're in the red again. So this is stable. I'm recording this, by the way. So if we lose this stream, I'll put it back up and I'll upload it. So, right. Then we talked about streaming residuals and data transparency, right? Talking about that they secured substantial and essential gains in residuals. They absolutely had to, but increased residual costs increased the incentive for platforms to remove underperforming series and films to avoid bearing the cost of their continued availability. There's no blame or fault inherent in that statement. It's basic economic reality. No, it's capitalism. Yep. Just as it's basic equity. Well, capitalism.
Capitalism.
Just as it was basic economic reality that the increasingly felt impact of increases to streaming residuals created as part of the last basic agreement informed Disney and Warner Brothers Discovery's decisions to remove content from their platforms, all right, especially high-budget shows that were still in the costliest early years of their exhibitions. Now, here's what is interesting. The Writers Guild's hard-won viewership streaming bonus, viewership base, will rightly reward creators for generating outsized value for the companies they work for. That's good. It'll also put additional strain on the company's hunt for profitability in their streaming operations, further incentivizing deplatforming of less successful projects. So if it doesn't fly,
so
and they're going to pull it right away because they don't want to spend the money.
Well, but it's also, it's not just that the more you spend on a like TV series or whatever, most likely the better it'll do. Right. So, I know that's not always the case, but so that this also means that there's not going to be any of those low budget stuff that is actually good. Like it'll only incentivize stuff that works to the median audience, so that people will consume it. So this is just yeah, like this in somewhat helps them only make terrible content. You know, like I don't know. In theory, it should incentivize like underpaying for a project and having it perform well, but that's not how that's going to work. You know, like you can't take those risks as a producer. You know.
Yes. Nope.
So
And as a studio, like, you know, all their jobs are on the line.
yeah.
Right. But as the industry exits an era of reckless expansion and enters into one of universally expected contraction, this person wonders if some of the negotiating capital spent on some of these issues might have been better dedicated to securing more evenly distributed benefits, such as minimum availability requirements in streaming to protect against deplatforming during the highest value early years of each project's run. Again, this person is arguing about things that they should have asked for, but probably didn't, that might have also worked for them and been better for them than some of the gains that they did win. But the ideological passion and negotiating energy dedicated to data transparency, an issue to which the union achieved very limited gains, which could have been decoupled from the success-based residual, could have been reserved for 2026, as the growing prevalence of advertising and streaming increases systemic pressure on the industry to share enough information to support a robust ad market. Yeah, I don't like that. But after all, who won? And I like this. It's, if I didn't answer that question, it's always because it's the wrong question to be asking. The best negotiators, and this is coming from one, realize that there's no such thing as winning a negotiation or winning the deal, or at least that it doesn't mean what people usually use it to mean. All right? Because when you win the deal and you get everything and the person on the other side gets nothing, that's not a good deal that will end up serving you in the end, usually. Deals happen because both sides believe they're better off making a deal than not making one. Frequently, those parties are going to have to negotiate and make a deal again in the future, which these are, even if they don't in our industry, the negotiators who represent them will. So winning the negotiation isn't about somehow beating the other side. It's about making a deal that everyone can live with. That's good for both sides.
He's both sidesing? Okay.
Not leaving
both
anyone...
sides.
Well, yes, but not... The only way you actually make a deal for a union, unless the company jams it through and strong arms, the company usually doesn't just roll over.
Jams it through in strong arms.
The company doesn't usually just roll over unless they're really forced to. In which case, you know what happens? They start
to work with our slave masters. They just
start looking to replace the people that we've seen this over and over again. Little by little, you start to see the people that were dissident, the people that spoke up, chopped out. When it comes to a negotiation this consequential for the entire entertainment industry, we all won, or none of us did, and it'll be a few years before we know for sure. So, yeah, Mouse, to answer your question about boats, we do tag it. It's tagged, and it's up on Rumble, and it's up on Rockfin on INN, and it's very easy to find.
Yep.
The problem is that YouTube pulled it down.
Somehow got hit for misinformation.
They both...
What, cats aren't dicks, suddenly?
They both
Kids aren't stupid? What
They hit last Sunday night's stream. I had to trim something out, and then in order to get it back and restored,
boats
and because of that...
smash into other boats?
I don't understand it.
Me either.
I don't know what I said at the end, maybe.
Tell us where we lied.
What happened?
Why does YouTube not
What happened?
Why does YouTube not at least give us a timestamp?